Ty and Mitch here to talk about drugs and alcohol again.
Here to shed some light on drug addiction, alcoholism, and what rehab really looks like. Welcome back to the Reach Higher Studio. We're here for another episode of our just shooting the shit sort of conversations that we're having. We're going to start off our show today by doing a drug draft. And so what we're going to do, we're going to be drafting basketball teams, but each player is going to have to be on a certain kind of drug. And so you're picking my team, I'm picking your team,
Yes.
or we're picking our own teams?
I'm picking your team.
And I'm picking your team.
So I'm trying to sasabotage you.
So I'm trying to give you the players that are on the worst kind of drugs. And you're
For
doing
basketball.
the same for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many are we doing?
5.
Okay.
And who gets to go first?
I get to go first.
Oh, okay. Go.
Okay. So my first one for you is air duster.
Oh, gosh. That would be the worst in basketball. You'd have to carry it around in your pocket and like just keep hitting it the whole game.
Do you need a rag to do it?
No.
You just right in your mouth.
Right in your mouth.
Okay.
Okay.
Ty used to be an air duster fanatic.
I went hard on those things at one point. Okay. My first drug for you for basketball team is going to be fentanyl.
Oh, geez. Just probably wouldn't even show up. Wouldn't even show up for practice.
Well, and they're just going to be nodding out the whole time.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to wake up enough to play.
Okay. My second one for you is salvia. It's getting weird with it.
I've never done salvia. Have
It was
you?
the worst 5 minutes of my life. Like the worst
What
5
is
minutes.
it?
So it's, I don't know.
It's not tobacco. It's not spice. It's like a, what even is it?
I don't know if it's like some synthetic or a plant. I don't know. But when I used it, I was probably like 17 or 18. And I got it, or my buddy got it at a smoke shop. I think it was legal. And we smoked out of an apple. And they were like, oh, it's going to be 5 minutes. And I was like, okay. And so he took a hit off this apple and he was just laughing. And I was like, okay, I like to laugh. And so I took like this, just a massive hit. And I'm already like, if I smoke a little weed, I'm talking like a laughable amount, a child's amount of weed. I'm done, right? Like it's not fun. I've always hated it. And so I've always said, the best strain of weed is heroin for me. But so I did this just rip of salvia and I was laughing for like 1 second. And then the ground turned to water and my buddy turned into a ringmaster of a circus. And I was like, this is not going well. And so we were on a balcony of a friend's house and I walk into her room and I mean, the whole world is just terrible, awful for basketball. And so I sit in this girl's moon chair and I'm tripping, right? And in my mind, I was like, I have flipped a switch in my brain and this is never going to end. And this is my life now. And this girl walks up to me and she's like, hey, it's going to be okay. It's almost over. And I don't know if you've ever seen the first Batman movie, like Batman Begins, but the Scarecrow, he's like this villain and he sprays this stuff in people's faces and it makes them hallucinate. And she looked like bugs were crawling out of her face and stuff. And it was like, why do people do this? Yeah.
Our drug draft just got hijacked by a salvia story.
Sorry.
Okay, so my team, I've got air duster and salvia.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got fentanyl, and I'm going to give you mushrooms.
Oh, damn. That was
But
going to
like
be my next one.
an ungodly amount of mushrooms.
Yeah. Like they're hugging the basketball.
And yeah, they're in another world.
Okay. Kind of like salvia.
Yeah.
Yeah. But probably less aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay. My third one for you, I think would have to be alcohol. I think playing on alcohol would be
But what level of alcohol?
like my level of alcohol.
Like fall down the stairs and tell your boss that you have cancer?
Yeah.
That sort of alcohol?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You're not like chilling on a couple of brewskis.
You're done. You're out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you... Gosh, what's another good one? I'm going to give you meth.
Oh, that's my secret weapon right there. He's carrying the whole team. I think. I mean, he's not following any rules. He's not showing up on time.
He's going to have a lot of stuff in his pockets, though.
Yeah, he's going to be like figuring out how the Jumbotron works. But he might at least be able to make it to the court.
True. He'll have a lot of energy. That's for sure. Okay. He'll go all game. He'll never have to sub him out.
Oh, yeah. It would just be him.
Yeah.
While the rest of them are like licking the walls.
Okay. So you have fentanyl, you have mushrooms, and you have meth.
Yes.
I have air dusters, salvia,
alcohol. All right. Then I'm going to give you somewhat along the lines of mushrooms. I'm going to give you acid.
I've never done acid.
Me either. But it can't be good for basketball.
All I know about acid is that, like, was it Jimi Hendrix or something used to like put it in his bandana before a concert, and like so he'd be like tripping on acid in a concert. I don't know.
Does it like seep through the skin?
I've never done
Or
acid.
did he like suck on it during?
I have no idea.
Oh.
If you know anything about acid, go ahead and tell us about it in the comments. But okay, gosh, my team sucks. One more. I give you one more. No, you're at 3.
No. So I give you one more. You give me 2 more.
Okay. I'm going to give you
Oh, I got my last one.
gosh, I'm drawing a blank. I'm going to give you I'll give you marijuana
Marijuana?
since you hate it so much.
Yeah.
And it makes you paranoid.
I mean, it doesn't. Are we taking these drugs? This is like ourselves playing.
No, I'm giving you this one because of how much you hate it personally.
Yeah. I'm just not a fan. Yeah. It just makes me so paranoid.
Okay.
Okay. And the last one for you, I think this is the 5th one,
This will be my 5th.
is Xanax.
Oh gosh, why didn't I think of that?
Because I feel like if you have someone who's just Xanaxed out, I don't know the term for it, but they would just be like
Asleep.
or like trying to steal stuff.
They'd
don't
probably just end
remember
up in the stands, like looking for things under the seats
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
But okay, last drug. I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna give you. Gosh, I'm struggling. I think you win this game. I'm gonna give you. I'm gonna give you. I'm trying to think of a good one. All the good ones are gone. Let's do bath salts.
Oh my gosh, bath salts.
That's kind of like another meth.
Yeah, it kind of is, but I think like people in bath salts try to eat each other's faces and stuff.
I only did bath salts once.
You did?
Yes.
How was it?
It was wretched.
Yeah.
I was with 2 other people, and we were at this apartment complex in Provo, and the 2 people that I were with, like, instantly started looking out windows and turning lights off to see if people were outside.
Oh, it's like you skip the fun part of meth and just go straight to like there's birds aren't real type stuff.
And drones are outside, and the FBI is staged around the corner.
What's the point?
Yeah. But, okay, so my team, air dusters, alcohol, salvia, Xanax,
And acid.
Gosh, that's a pretty bad team. What was yours?
There was meth, bath salts. I can't remember. Mushrooms. I can't remember any of the drugs. Oh, fentanyl.
Anyways, we're moving on. We'll let Mitch win that one. I'm not a fan of my team.
We'll do honorable mentions of crack and ecstasy.
There you go. Okay, moving on. Today we're going to talk about all the different obstacles that are out there that exist that kind of get in the way of people getting into rehab. And so whenever somebody gets to the point where they're ready to go to rehab, there's lots of barriers and there's things that they have to overcome. They can't just like show up at the door and say, hey, I'm here ready to check in. Like there's kind of a lot that goes into it. And so I'll kind of start it off and I'll say, and we'll just kind of go back and forth and you share some of the things that you think are obstacles. I'll share some of the things that I think are obstacles. So going right to the beginning, when a person gets to the point where they're ready to start getting help and they want to start looking into rehab, I think that the first obstacle that they're going to run into is the lack of knowledge. And what I mean by that is if you've never been to rehab before, it's like, where do I start? Where do I go? Where are the rehab centers around here? Whatever. And so when you're out there using and you're in your active addiction, it can be a massive task to think about, to have to start making phone calls and asking questions when you might not even know what questions to ask or how to get into rehab or whatever. And so my best advice for that is you kind of just have to Google it and start making phone calls. I think one of the best things you can do is just Google rehab centers near me. Then that'll bring up a list of places. And then I would just start at the top and call the first place.
Ones.
What's that?
After the sponsored
Yeah,
ones.
skip the sponsored ads. Go to the ones that are near you and just call them. And I would start off with questions like, hey, I'm looking to get into rehab. What does it take to get in? Probably one of the early things they're going to ask you is, what insurance do you have? Or do you have Medicaid or anything like that? And you're going to start to figure out like, okay, this place said that I couldn't go there for this reason, so I need to find a place that does this or will accept that or whatever. And then you kind of just have to keep asking questions. And if one place tells you, no, we can't take you for whatever reason, there might not be a bed or they can't take your insurance or whatever it is, just go to the next one on the list and just keep asking all the questions. I always think it's a good idea. If a place tells you no, that they can't take you for whatever reason, I would say, okay, who would you refer me to? Like, do you have another place around here that you know of that does take my insurance or that does have an opening or something like that? And usually the treatment centers are pretty connected to each other. And so you should be able to get a good list of, the other places that are around you and maybe even some phone numbers or whatnot.
Yeah, I feel like when people start to think rehab, they start to think like, well, I don't have $20,000 for like some, Passages Malibu type place.
Commercials.
Yeah, and I think that I thought that in the past, and I didn't know that, insurance was a big part of it, because a lot of insurance plans do have substance abuse or mental health benefits as part of their policies. So you'd want to look into that. And so I know that a lot of people out there, they think that it's just not an option for them because they're not wealthy or whatever. But
right.
Anybody should be able to get some sort of treatment somehow. Even a lot of times people will call me and they're not insured. And so, in those cases, usually there's a way or some sort of qualifying event that allows them to get on some sort of insurance, whether that be, some sort of commercial plan, an employer plan, Medicaid, something that will help them to be able to get into some sort of program so they can start healing.
I think that the whole insurance piece alone is one of the reasons why, people out there think like, oh, rehab centers are just about money and all they care about is money, blah, 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 because like that's kind of one of the first things we need to know.
Yeah.
And because running a rehab center is expensive.
Yeah.
And so like, unfortunately, like it, you have to,
it's
it
like a
costs
hospital.
money. Yeah. And so, I think that, whenever somebody calls and says, hey, can I come to your program? And they say, oh, we can't take your insurance. Or we'll use your example. If somebody calls and they don't have insurance, they don't have anywhere, then I know that there's places out there that don't take insurance. Like there's places like the Other Side Academy and like things like that
Even the crisis center.
Yeah. That, they don't work off insurance. That's not even a factor. There are places out there. You might have to travel a little bit to get to those places. Salvation Army is another one. But even if you don't have insurance, then if it's the middle of the year, it's not open enrollment, you can still apply for Medicaid, and you're either going to qualify for Medicaid or you're not going to qualify for Medicaid. If you do qualify for Medicaid, then you can start finding a treatment center that takes Medicaid.
And there's like 10 different types of Medicaid in the state. And so that's like another added complication, if you will.
If you do qualify, or if you don't qualify for Medicaid, then that, I believe, is something that then makes you eligible to qualify for regular insurance, like through the marketplace or whatever. And so either way, if you don't have insurance, I think that one of the best things you can do is go apply for Medicaid. And if you get accepted, then you have Medicaid and you have resources you can go to. If you don't get accepted to Medicaid, then you can qualify for insurance. And usually, it might take a few weeks or months or whatever for something to become active. But once you have something in place like that, the doors are going to start opening.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people just get frustrated because they're like, well, I just wanted to call and I wanted to get in today. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. But
I just had a phone call 5 minutes ago, something like that.
Yeah. So if you are working with a treatment center that's worth their salt, they should be staying in connection with you. Like, I know that Ty and myself, we both have people that we're working with, and we check in on every day, every other day. Like, how's it going? How are you feeling? How's things? Like, where are you at in the process? Blah, blah, blah. And just kind of like basically hold their hand until they walk through the door. And so don't give up. There are resources out there, and just, I don't know. I think that just make the phone call, talk to friends or family that might be able to help you. And like you said, the doors will start opening. So that shouldn't be an obstacle or a barrier to treatment. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a big road bump or speed bump or whatever, because there is a lot that has to go into it, but that's kind of what me and Mitch are here for. And we're going to keep following up with you. And we're going to, because again, let's use that same situation. Somebody calls, they want help, but they don't have insurance. They don't have Medicaid or nothing. Realistically, if we are their first phone call, they're going to have a conversation with us. We're going to go over a lot of information. We're going to say, okay, try this or try that. And then if they're going to go try to get on Medicaid, they're probably going to have to call Medicaid. Medicaid's probably going to say, okay, you got to go to this website. You got to create an account. You got to fill out this application. After that, you got to, have this phone call with this person. We have to get this additional information. And then once we get to that point, I mean, there's a lot of like waiting on hold and going online and remembering passwords. And like when you're using drugs, that stuff sucks.
Yeah.
Like,
but also that's life.
Yeah.
Like you just kind of have to fall in line in some of this stuff for, like, just think of it. It's investing your time for a better outcome in the future. Otherwise, I mean, it's unlikely that you're going to just stop and get out of it on your own. I mean, it's possible, but it's pretty unlikely. So you're just spinning your wheels until you finally just kind of bite the bullet and do it.
And the sooner you can get going on all that stuff, even if you're not necessarily ready right this second, if you're out there using drugs, start figuring out insurance, because when the time comes where you do need help, you're going to want to have something in place.
Yeah. And it's just good to have health insurance.
Yeah.
I think.
Even if you got to go to the doctor or the emergency room or something. But anyways, okay, what else? What's another barrier or obstacle in getting into rehab?
So Ty and myself, we are kind of like the front lines of every phone call that comes through. Either goes to me or Ty, and a lot of times we'll get like, the mom who's overwhelmed because her son is out and about and using, and she'll say, okay, or just whatever family member, and she's saying, hey, I need to get my son in. What do we need to do? He is using this and he has insurance, and, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, all right, well, what's he using? This and that. And she's like, well, I don't know. Can you talk to him? And then I'll call the person that she's wanting to get in, and he's like, no, I don't want to go to rehab.
How'd you get my number?
Yeah, exactly. And so then I'll call mom back, and she's like, well, he needs it. And, it's like, well, mom, I'm not debating whether or not he needs it. And she's like, well, what do we do? And we get this question a lot. Like, what do you do if your loved one does not want to go to treatment?
So it's the willingness.
It's the willingness.
The obstacle, yeah.
Yeah, the willingness is the obstacle. And, I feel like this is one of the questions we get the most. And we speak at the college for nursing students. And this is probably the number one question that we get, like, how do you make an addict or an alcoholic reach that point to where they're like, I'm willing to do this? And the straightforward answer is you can't.
You don't. Yeah.
There's no conversation that me or Ty can like, hey man, you really need to do this. They know that they need to do this.
Right.
But there's no secret handshake. There's no anything like that we can't bring them to the facility and lock them in. They can walk out of treatment at any time. It's completely voluntary. It's an adult program. And so I would say willingness is the number two.
Yeah.
obstacle.
Yeah. I think speaking along those lines, it's like, it gets to the point where if you don't have that willingness, then you're just not going to be at the point. And let's say we'll use that example as well. Let's say that mom calls, my son needs rehab. We call him and he's like, oh yeah, my mom's going to kick me out if I don't go to rehab or whatever.
Yep.
Like we can go through all the steps. We can verify the insurance. We can check all the boxes and, they definitely qualify because of their using or whatever. If they make it into rehab, but they're doing it for mom or they're doing it for so-and-so, it's going to be a problem when they get there. And they're going to be, when they get there, they're just, if you don't have the willingness to get there, you're going to struggle with the willingness when you are there.
Yeah.
Like, because there's so many like rules and procedures and expectations and, there's a lot that goes into it, and you got to sit through groups and classes, and they take you on activities that you're either going to like or you're not going to like. And, and so willingness is big. You can't force anybody to have willingness. I think that the best advice for family members that have a loved one that doesn't have any willingness is start arming yourself with as much information about all this as you can. And I think that family members often like to think, I'm not the one that needs help. I'm not the one that's using drugs. Yeah. Why do I need to start learning stuff? Why do I need to go to support groups? Why do I need to, familiarize myself with drugs and symptoms and whatever? And it's like, I can't tell you how many times I've had clients, drug addicts, myself included, that have been like, gosh, once my family started learning tactics and strategies on how to not put up with my bull crap, it was so much harder for me to get away with all my knucklehead stuff.
Well, it's a family disease, and once the family started healing, I started healing.
Yeah. And so best thing you can do if you're a family member, find a support group. Go start talking to people, familiarize yourself with it. Don't put up with, behaviors that are crossing your boundaries.
Yeah,
and
boundaries are
like
huge.
Yeah.
I know that. So my parents would go to like family groups and Al-Anon, and they told me that same thing that you just said. Why am I in this meeting when Mitch is the one that's either out or in rehab or whatever? And it's like, well, because you're the ones going crazy. Like your loved one, they're doing their thing, but it's the families that really suffer the most sometimes.
They're more worried about the addiction and your behaviors than you are.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just pulling their hair out. They're losing sleep. And I'm sure
you don't care. You'll sleep in a 2006 Dodge Caliber.
Yeah, 2007. Yeah. And really, it's like I didn't care. I remember one time I was sitting in an Econo Lodge in Arizona, and I had heroin, and I was like, I could live like this for the rest of my life. I mean, this is great. I mean, like that was the threshold for what I thought a good life was.
Especially if you get a drug dealer that's willing to bring it to your tent in the desert.
That's happened to me as well. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with this. I'm happy, but my parents were losing sleep. And I'm sure that anyone who has, parents or loved ones that have been to jail or treatment said that the best sleep that they ever got was when their addict or alcoholic was in rehab or jail. Like they could finally rest because they knew they were safe.
Yeah, for sure. Another obstacle about coming to rehab. Let's talk about the legal stuff for a minute.
All right.
There's, if you're out there using, chances are that sooner or later you're going to get wrapped up in the legal system. You're going to get caught. You're going to get busted. You're going to get in trouble somehow or another. And, if you're lucky, you'll get arrested, and then you'll have to figure all this out from jail. And, once you get there, the court system can be a rat race, and, it's really hard to get out of it. And it's a long, slow moving process. Most of the time, there's different hearings and dates, and they push it out 2 weeks, they push it out a month, like things like that. And so if we talk to a lot of people that are in jail that are trying to get out of jail to come to rehab.
Yes, because the number one catalyst for willingness is jail for sure. Everyone's always ready to go to treatment when
they're in jail.
When they're in jail, yeah.
Yep,
and
100%.
they find the Lord.
They've been neglecting their upbringing, their whole life, and now they're ready to change. But and navigating yourself through the legal system is difficult. You're going to have to work with your attorney. Your attorney's going to have to work with the prosecutors. Depending on your criminal history, you're going to get different, sanctions and requirements based on, severity and longevity and things like that. And, that can just complicate things. And that's, you kind of have to expect if you're out there using, and everybody already knows this, but like you're going to end up in jail at some point or another. You can only get away with it for so long.
And I think that, I don't know, when we talk to people in the legal system, they're like, because we get phone calls from the jail, and our jail is called purgatory, and we'll get phone calls and messages and, hey, I need to get in. What do I need to do? And the things that we talked about before, the insurance and the getting your affairs in order, become 10 times harder when you're in jail. And I think that my attorney, and we're pretty well connected in the court systems down here. We've been doing this a long time, but they're like, oh, my attorney isn't talking to me, this and that. But most people are assigned a public defender, at least the, people that we're working with. And they're like, oh, he's not talking to me. It's like, well, I mean, the public defenders have a caseload of 1 million people. And so it's unrealistic for them to take your case as if you're OJ Simpson and I'm trying to fight this, misdemeanor heroin charge or whatever it is. And so it gets so complicated once you're in jail.
The worst is people who are in jail, they got arrested on possession or paraphernalia, or sometimes it includes things more like, assaults or guns or things like that. And the worst is when you have somebody that's hemmed up in there on all sorts of stuff, and then they're going to try and fight it based on procedure. And they're
take it to the box.
The cop didn't read me my rights. Or the signature was in the wrong place on the warrant. So I'm going to try and get my public defender to get it thrown out or something. And it's call me when you're done.
Well, and it's just little things that the prosecutor will probably drop down anyway. And all it's done is extend their stay in there. We're lucky we live in a community where the legal system is pretty favorable to treatment and getting people help.
We've had a chance to get to know the prosecutors pretty well too. And they're all favorable about treatment. They're all
adult probation and parole has been great. I mean, everyone's really great around. There's not, I don't know if I can think of anyone that's treatment's terrible. Send them to prison. Right. Exactly. Especially for nonviolent drug offenders. I think that's kind of the main thing. If they're just repeat intoxication charges, it's maybe you need some help, man.
And I think that, so this is, that kind of brings up another barrier or obstacle is your resistance towards law enforcement in general. I think that there's so many people out there that have that prison mentality, snitches get stitches, F the police, stupid, thinking or whatever. But if you have to understand that all those people are in their places in the community and they are helping people get help. It's from a role of a punishment standpoint. And it's hey, if you break this law, you're going to get this consequence. And it's you kind of deserve it though. I don't know. I think it's,
well, if you look at it pragmatically, what are we supposed to do? Or what are they supposed to do? I got this question the other day from an adult probation and parole agent, and he's like, how are your interactions with police? And I have charges for spitting on police and swinging on cops. The last time I got arrested, I was swinging on doctors and nurses in the hospital and stuff. Every time, law enforcement's been cool with me. Hey man,
knock it off,
reel it in. Yeah, exactly. And they've always been really cool. And it's what were they supposed to do? Just let me go. Let me keep acting a fool. I was. It was crazy.
I
That's not cool.
I always like it when I see other people, and this happened for me because I was on probation at one point. I did not like my first probation officer. He was a hard-nosed guy, but I was in the throes of my addiction at that point, and I wasn't going to listen to anything that he had to say. I mean, he was my enemy, even if he was the nicest guy in the world, but it got to the point where, when I went to rehab and I started making progress and turning my life around, I started to realize, like, hey, these guys are actually, they're trying to help me, you know, like, and I always looked at them as the enemy or whatever. And, I think it's cool when I get to see that shift in mindset happen for other people as well. And people kind of come to realize that, hey, these people, they're part of the recovery process as well. And they have the power and the authority to jump in and intervene for us when we can't help ourselves. And if we start, acting in ways that's going to be, above and beyond, like, and we're breaking laws and we're at risk for hurting other people and whatnot, like, we need those guys to step up and help us get to where we need to go.
Well, they're like little bumper trays at the bowling alley, right? They just keep you back in line. And it's usually just like, at least around here, it's more often than not just kind of like a slap in the wrist. I mean, if things are like repetitive and over again, the penalties, I guess, get a little bit more severe, as they should if you're like not listening. But I mean, as unsurprising as it might be, every person that I know that has successfully terminated probation or treatment or drug court or anything, it's pretty easy if you're just following the rules. I mean, it's only when you're trying to do dirt that it's not easy, and it's like, they're out to get me, and you get pulled over and you don't have a license and it's been suspended since 2006, and you're on like your 5th driving without a license. Like, the system isn't out to get you. It's like,
you just need to do something different.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine a bowling ball that's pissed off at the bumpers because it hit the bumper, and now it's like, F you, man, leave me alone. I'm trying to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And they like adapt a whole lifestyle around that. And the bowling ball gets tattoos on them.
I was going to say they have like a loyalty tattoo on their forehead.
Yeah.
That's
Anyways.
okay.
Go.
We out of time? We have one more.
Go for it.
Because that brought up another one. Another barrier or wall that the person coming into treatment throws up sometimes that I see is different socioeconomic classes, I guess, because you get a melting pot of people in treatment.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you get, like Snake from prison, and then you get like,
that's his name. Snake.
Yeah, you get Snake, and then you get like, attorneys or like doctors. I mean, we had an attorney fly out from like
Louisiana.
the East Coast one time. Yeah. And coming in with people who are, like hardcore addicts. And so I know, or like, you'll get the soccer mom who drinks too many seltzers on the weekends.
I was going to say, there's times where it's just like your average mom, and she has a job and she, lives a relatively normal life, but it's kind of starting to fall apart a little bit, and she can't stop drinking, or else she starts shaking and going to withdrawals. And then, she goes into rehab, and and all of a sudden you got people you're in group with talking about how they were robbing 7-Elevens and sleeping with 10 dudes a day for free drugs. And it's like,
it can be kind of a culture shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the main thing to remember in situations like that, because I feel like I kind of came into that when I first started going to rehab.
Me too.
I was just an alcoholic, but I was drinking half a gallon of whiskey a day. But I felt, and this is going to sound weird, but I felt almost less than, because there were like heroin and meth addicts in there. Yeah. I eventually reached that point. But, when I got there, I was like, I felt like a little like nerd, and I was like,
I'm not as bad as these people.
Yeah. My lunch money going to get stolen at lunch. And so I don't know, but it was when I started looking at the similarities rather than the differences, and you'll notice that there's a common denominator among all the clients. And, the glaringly obvious one is that they're all struggling with this, or they're all struggling with something, and their solution to that is some sort of substance.
Right.
And Snake from prison probably didn't start out as Snake from prison.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably, just a young kid. Maybe he just took a wrong turn when he was a teenager or something, and then just kept taking wrong turns. Mm-hmm. But I bet that soccer mom would have liked that, kid when he was growing up, or, so I think that finding the similarities rather than the differences, and then bonding over those similarities and finding out like, why are we using drugs and alcohol to figure out what's going on in our heads and our hearts?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we could go on and on and on, but all of these things are, all these things are the very reason why Mitch and I have the jobs that we do, because we've helped lots of people navigate all of these situations and more. And, I think that we're both we kind of have it up in our heads pretty good. You could pretty much throw any situation at us with whatever your circumstances are. And, we'll be able to know off the top of our head what needs to be done. And one of my favorite things about my job is just being able to give somebody a checklist or like a game plan, and being able to, hear what they're about, hear what they got going on in their situation, and then being able to be like, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to do this, this, and this. I need this, this, and this pieces of information, or you need to call this person at this place, or, whatever it is. And I love it when I'm able to give somebody a game plan, and you can almost just like feel the relief over the phone from somebody that's like, okay, now I know what I need to do, and I have some sort of direction.
Yeah, it's nice because, like I said, we have these people that we're working with, and it's really nice when we're like, okay, do this, check back with me. And they actually do. Yep. I'm like, okay, the willingness is there. Yep. And so there's like a spark there that this might be working this time. Because sometimes people call and they're like, all right, I'll do that. And then we like never hear from them again. Yeah. That happens a lot. Yep. Or we'll hear from them in like 3 or 4 months. Right. Or they'll call us from jail.
Yeah. If you are struggling with obstacles, call us, DM us, message us, whatever. Let us know how we can help you. And don't give up. If you've got a mountain of obstacles in front of you, it takes a lot of effort and dumb little tasks, but
it takes courage too.
Yep. That's what we're here to help you with. So follow us on all the socials. The end.